was a poor selection on my part.
Today, we are talking about Travelers, Dimension Police, a movie directed by Koichi Sakamoto and starring a few actresses better known for their Sentai and Kamen Rider work.
Sakamoto is a long-time stunt choreographer and director, starting off in the 90s as a stuntman on Mask Man and The Guyver Dark Hero, before working on Saban's Toku adaptations and steadily moving up in the genre as a choreographer, stunt director, and ultimately full-time director.
He is also credited for the creation and proliferation of the Kalishplosion, those ridiculously excessive, slow-motion, and over-focused gasoline and CGI explosions you see in the Disney years of Power Rangers. But, while he does use similar effects work that can be categorized as such, he wasn't the originator for that technique, nor is he actually responsible for its horrific use in Dino Thunder onwards, as he was not the stunt coordinator or director as he had been in the early Saban seasons. It's really a tug-of-war in opinion over who's actually responsible. And Kyoryuger's excessive overuse of explosions does not help matters at all when trying to defend the guy. But in the greater body of work he is actually credited as directing and managing the choreography for, such effects are executed properly, without the slow-motion nonsense and overfocus on the event that is part of the defining elements of the Kalishplosion, and is balanced with other stunt work to keep things dynamic. Such is not or rarely present in the Kalish years, and just don't fit in with the picture of his career before and since. It just gets hard to say such these days, when the next thing you see him directing contains quite a lot of what he's commonly called out for, just nowhere near as bad. Hell, he's far from the worst offender I have seen with regards to such.
I don't know why he retains an affinity for using over-the-top explosions, because when he's not using them, he can be really good and innovative with the stunts he employs. Hell, even his use of them when he's actually in charge is not consistently bad.
And this movie doesn't really play to his strengths, or if they do, it's really pervy.
Honestly, I picked this up because it stars Ayumi Kinoshita, better known as Jasmine Raymond, aka Jackie Yellow, Yoko Fukui, Kyoryu Cyan II, and... Have I mentioned I love Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds?
Well, I should have read more about the movie. The film is actually mainly focused on Nao Nagasawa's character, Ai.
Nao Nagasawa was Nanami Nono, aka Hurricane Blue from Ninpu Sentai Hurricaneger, and the Sentai actress that has most returned to do cameos later on. She's also a popular and active idol with a bunch of acting credits and songs produced.
And with her more extensive credits listing and experience, it's not surprising she got the main role, but it ended up pushing the rest of the cast to the side to focus on her. Or, more specifically, her body.
You'll see what I mean.
And you'll forgive me if I don't do my cite the actors thing with this movie. I've not been able to find details about who plays who, aside from the lead actresses, and barely anyone in this film is named at all.
Gee, it's as if naming your characters doesn't matter if they aren't going to be relevant to the plot.
Which seems to be a problem for this writer. This movie was written by Sotaro Hayashi, better known for some of the more gross-out-inducing episodes of Garo, and the movie Samurai Princess. I watched it as part of my research, and honestly could not finish it. It's that bad.
So please, don't ask or expect me to review it. I'd rather forget I just watched it in the first place.
The film starts off with Ai Osaka, a police officer a part of
And you can all pretty much guess where this is going for the rest of the movie. From the details given about the film, I honestly thought this was going to be a straight-up action detective noir film with female leads and not something to titillate the male viewer. I was thinking No, not those Charlie's Angels! Let me rephrase. I thought this was going to be totally spies, not something in the range of mild cheesecake.
This is what I meant when I said this doesn't work to Sakamoto's strengths. He's good with bringing out characterization with the actors he has, their nuances, giving them a unique way of moving and a fighting style, and the script is giving him none of that to work with. It's bland and generic, obviously structured more for gaze to linger on Nao Nagasawa's admittedly hot body.
Honestly though, while it's obviously meant to be a sexually charged movie, It falls flat at that. Entirely. At least to me.
Closest I can say it gets is a shower scene that you've seen in so many anime, and I've seen in a fair amount of tokusatsu, that even that is barely a blip on the radar.
Granted, those kinds of scenes have different societal nuances to them that don't necessarily have the intent to titillate. But Hayashi's body of work seems to be contrasting to that sentiment. Honestly, I barely paid any attention to it, as such was blatantly uninteresting. How do you fail at fan service?
And yes, that means the quote from Henshin Justice on the cover, that's a lie. A pretty blatant lie. Anyways, she is a member of a police task force organized to stop criminals who breach the boundaries of the dimensions and travel through them.
The Cade Joke, Fire Ram, Crisis Empire, Macro Crime Syndicate, Sliders, we're walking.
Yeah, this idea just seems, well, boring. Mainly as it's been used a lot, not to set up the villains or the story, but to tell where these things come from and then not care about how such came about. So someone on the mainline Earth figured out how to jump dimensions, and not long after that, the technology was leaked, and a crime syndicate called Doubt rose to make the tech accessible to certain criminals to escape, kill their parallel world selves, and pass into anonymity, the Dimension Police working to thwart them. I corners this specific criminal on Retro World, which is out of temporal lockstep with the rest of the multiverse, only to find him talking with Yui, her former partner, who we later learn has actually joined Doubt.
I'm simplifying it to that, as the steps we take to get such straightened out take more than half the movie, and in pretty bad and regularly interrupted exposition dumps that are not cohesive to good storytelling.
The Purposescapes, I going to this world's version of a general informant that's been clued into the multiversal shenanigans, who repeatedly hits on her.
Shame on you. Now Nagasawa is a married woman. Last I checked.
She gets the details on the man's doppelganger and stakes him out for when the man will try to replace him. It's here we learn one of the better elements of the movie. Some dimensional media will end up showcasing that parallel world duplicates will have, at best, minor divergences from the one we are familiar with, such as the excellent Futurama episode, The Farnsworth Paradox. Travelers actually sidesteps that and makes each of the analogs products of their environments and divergent upbringings, making every analog not equivalent, and despite the film's overall failings, this is not one of them. When cornered, the criminal ends up being shot by Yui, asking Ai to talk with her.
Ai. 思い出して。本当のあなたを。
Clumsy plot points is go! Ai takes the man in, trying to interrogate him.
生意気にも黙秘するつもり?
Yeah, about that. Taking the Fifth is American slang to refer to our Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. Japan follows a different system for their amendments and laws, so this isn't actually comparable and removes the actual context of what is being said.
And it's not because of Miranda rights that he's not spilling about Doubt, it's because he's a pedophilic head case, and Ai's too mature a woman to bother holding his attention. So, Ai kicks his ass. Wow, abusing an arrestee? You can get sued for that. He spouses out and... Oh!
Ooh, nasty.
The secret is in the frosting, but I'll never tell.
It seems to be a pretty weak bomb, as Ai's unhurt, but the room has been showered in gore. Which segues surprisingly organically into the shower scene, but then proceeds to linger on now Nagasawa.
We get it, movie! She's hot! But we're barely 20 minutes in, and we've learned barely anything about the setting!
We get a flashback to when Ai and Yui were partners, showing that, yes, the Dimension Police's female outfits are that skimpy.
Even though, wouldn't that really make them stand out in all the alternate worlds? I mean, come on, people! For the love of sanity!
When Time Force's jumpsuits are more subtle and easily blend into a crowd, there's probably something wrong. Hell, those jumpsuits are more functional. They have pockets! Anyways, Yui's defection. Turns out on their last case as partners, they were tracking down Doubt after they killed Yui's brother. Said brother was the foremost researcher on the dimension travel technology. In fact, it's later shown he invented it. And to escape from the control of the government, he faked his death, using a dimensional counterpart that was already in the process of dying as his replacement in the act, so no one would be looking for him if he disappeared. He's actually the creator of doubt, and later in the film it's shown that while they have the tech, they are not responsible for the various criminal incursions.
And I'm spoiling this because it makes sense to drop this now, as the movie spends most of its runtime not addressing answers. It would be okay if it was framed as a mystery or narratively flowed together, but such details are dropped as an afterthought and not as the actual focus in driving a scene, instead teasing us along its length by repeatedly stopping to address it, and not doing so.
In fact, they give multiple windows where Yui could just say, doubt isn't responsible for what it's blamed for, and I can prove it if you let me. Anyways, her current partner, the robot, tells her Zordon has assigned her to protect a special individual in another dimension.
No, seriously, the Dimension Police are led by a giant floating head in a tube. That's found a way to project itself out of a tube, and managed by his harem of Chinese-speaking system operators.
The special individual is a woman named Haruka Saigusa, who lives on Faerie World.
And here's where we hit some probably intended illusions. Haruka is played by Yuko Takayama, better known as Rinko Daimon from Kamen Rider Wizard.
In the movie Wizard in Magic Land, the show's protagonist and lead female end up transported into a parallel reality, where everyone has magic powers when they normally do not.
And now she's in this movie, where the protagonist travels to a parallel reality where magic powers are common to contact her.
Well, now we know what she'll do if she weren't a police officer in Magic Land. She'd be a fortune teller. The problem with the multiple dimension story is you can easily get swamped in subplots that don't matter to the overall story, and Faerie World ends up feeling a lot like that. Instead of focusing on doubt and the irregularities in the Dimension Police's operations, we get a fair chunk of the second act dealing with the Faerie World nonsense. Specifically, Yui's Faerie World doppelganger putting into motion a plot to steal a magical artifact Haruka wears as a medium for conducting her powers. So she can...
I have no idea. She's already a successful newswoman. What does she want?
She talks about revolution or something, but with some rather shallow words, I talks her down from whatever she was planning, leading to...
もっと早くあなたに会いたかった。
No. You actually have to go through a dialogue chain to get him to the point where in a moment of defiance against his indoctrination, Saren kills himself. I barely used 3 sentences. What is it with me doing this show that makes me keep talking about bad uses of suicide as a plot device?
Yui and her brother arrive, and Haruka, blaming herself for that death, reveals she and the other Espers have the ability to create and traverse dimensional rifts. Problem is, conventional wisdom would think that using these without any form of protection is dangerous. And it is. The Dimension Police use special capsules and transit points, and Doubt uses similar equipment. So I being pulled into such?
Congratulations, you've just been unstuck in space-time! I really hope at some point you find Colin Mallory while you're in there. Guy's gotta be lonely after 14 years like that.
The command center manages to open a jump gate, allowing her to transition to a world that's off the map, and the same realm that current fiction writers love to write about, the dystopian future.
Why is it that Star Trek and Futurama are the only shows I can name where the future isn't blatantly dystopian in some way?
The Lost World, Jurassic Park, is of course run by a totalitarian regime that takes all resources for itself, leaving the remaining as thieves and beggars that, will get better food in prison, are also at the whims of such powers, such as these soldiers that restrain Ai and then proceed to whip her. And the fact she's in leather in no way implies this is fetishistic sadomasochism.
Again, we have the internet, Sotaro Hayashi. This isn't necessarily going to tell us the world is bad, it's kind of implied.
このボディースーツなんだけど、ある程度の衝撃は吸収するから、痛くも痒くもないんだよね。
It's a tank top styled like a corset. That is not body armor!
And this world is plot relevant, at least to the plot twist that we really did not need. See, the Dimension Police's leader is corrupt, and has been since its formation, to be used towards the big giant heads to take over the multiverse plans.
My god. Zordon has turned evil! No wonder Gosei came into existence.
All of the travelers they have been policing are all his disposable agents, contracted to kill certain people to gain their freedom, only for the loose ends to inevitably dry up and blamed on doubt. What is his eventual plan? Fuse all the dimensions into one!
Great! So on top of Gosei, the evil Zordon's also responsible for causing the Rider War and sticking Narutaki upon the multiverse.
The Eye we've been following is not the Eye of the Prime Reality. She is from this world, but implanted with all of I Prime's knowledge because she accidentally lucked into details about the Dimension Police's corruption and had to be silenced by being put into this world's prison hell, where the Eye we followed was supposed to be after stealing some food.
Meaning we could still have skipped this world to focus on the corruption plot, or used as a backdrop in a different form, such as the Dimension Police's leaders going beyond their mandates and hiding their evidence of such on supposedly unmapped worlds like this.
The robot comes in and saves her from worse indiscretions.
あんた単体でストリートを移動できたわけ？
And this would have been a better revelation had they bothered to establish this character and their relationship, along with the rules to all this dimension shift technology.
You know, I gave the Gatchaman movie crap as it diverged from the source material when they had no reason to do so, but at least they set the whole situation up, even if it had no foundation in reality with, well, anything. The movie's script seems to be too focused on putting the lead in purportedly sexy situations to actually tell a freaking story. Porn has more of a narrative cohesion. Spoilers, the robot is the remains of the Prime World's variant of the informant I has been encountering in every world, a former co-worker that was killed in the crossfire of I Prime's investigation.
How he got a robot body is never explained. Or if it was a throwaway line I really do not remember, which is essentially this movie in a nutshell. What was I talking about again? Ooh! Ayumi Kinoshita! I gotta watch this!
He tries to take them back to the Prime World, but runs low on power, the Dow team trying to save her, but instead she chooses to jump into another gate. Wow, that worked out great for you last time,
So, all things considered, this entire excursion artificially lengthens the movie. Have her rescued by them in the first unintentional transit. They go to Dystopia World, which is off the grid of the Dimension Police's knowledge, already verifying their story. You get the exposition dump about the relative details, and you have more time in this film to build towards taking apart the corrupt Dimension Police and revealing their activities.
Instead, this leads to another diversion. I dropped off back on Retro World and taken in by Yui and her brother's counterparts.
Why is she only in a towel?
Yeah, that was my response after having watched Beku New Sentai Chi-Chi Ranger.
What? Someone had to!
It's eventually revealed after a bit more of the movie is wasted that Ai's counterpart in this world was the man's wife, and she died from the criminal from the first act dropping his knife. That for some reason exploded for reasons that baffle me, as such a weapon's existence is never explained.
I mean, blades are not known for their explosive properties, mainly as you lose the weapons from the act. It's not like if I were to pull out one of my weapons, tap its edge against my hand, that anything would happen. Oh. The hell was that?
She of course takes this revelation badly, running off, only to return and find them murdered. She thinks Doubt did it, as you and her brother's cohorts are seen over the bodies. They didn't, but it doesn't keep Ai from being pissed off as she encounters Yui again, and Haruka warps them to the Lost World, Jurassic Park, where it finally dumps the exposition on all of us. adding in the fact that Haruko's analog in the Prime world ended up being killed by Yui's brother's work, which opened the transdimensional roadway in the first place.
This, however, ends up not making a lot of sense. We learn a little bit that Evil Zordon is actually from the Lost World, Jurassic Park. However, the movie appears to frame things so that said individual was corrupt and evil before the boundaries between realities were breached. So the question becomes, how did he come to the Prime world and replace his double in the first place?
I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding some of the dialogue presented, because the translation is crap. But something that's also not explained is how the hell they got a police division formed to stop travelers set up so fast into such an extensive organization if the technology to do such is very, and I do mean very recent. The exchange of eyes and Yui's defection happened months ago, so I wouldn't chart this as being older than at most 2 or so years. A description blurb from this movie says the dimension travel tech has been around for 10 years, but from the events showcased in the movie, there is zero evidence of such a time frame existing, nor is that ever said in the movie. Nor does the movie summary on the DVD case, which has a lot of typos, at all inform the audience of this. They work to free the memories I has forcibly suppressed, and then rescue I Prime from the Lost World Jurassic Park's prison facility, where she's about to be summarily executed, the lot intervening in a short fight scene. They get a chance to talk, I for some reason expositing on the infinitum of the universe, only to be interrupted by an incoming death beam from the big giant head. Yep, I Prime dies. Evil Zordon kills the Doubt underlings, Yui's brother holding it off as the girls jump into the halo of the sun to get to the command center, smashing his energy tube and scattering his evil across the universe. Or not. Turns out Evil Zordon was all a distraction so the guy could operate without anyone knowing he was hopping dimensions, taking the robot on them after its personality override is engaged. The trio succeeds in quickly taking down the poorly rendered CGI droid, before ending it with a bullet in the brain guy. But he gets back up.
Guess he took a slight trip to Zombie World. Double tap, morons!
No! Actually, part of his master plan has been all to get Haruko's artifact, which has been shown to have been stolen some time ago. He can somehow use it with no prior training or inclination of having affinity for magic, nor being from Faerie world. We get a series of shaky cam action scenes as I and Yui double team the final boss, and this sequence is not well choreographed at all. It really seems like this was all phoned in or whatnot. The robot comes back online, revealing the thing about it being the informant's prime analog, and wanting to protect I.
And this would have been a hell of a lot more of an emotional scene had the whole thing not just been a pointlessly wasted cipher.
It reveals, in the fine Japanese tradition, that the robot is a transformer, and converts itself into a weapons platform that they use to atomize Evil Zordon. Good riddance to bad villains. So the movie wraps up, Haruko returning home, Yui's brother taking charge of the Dimensional Police, and Yui and I partners again hunting down travelers. That still somehow transition even though the guy purporting such is long dead.
Freeze!
This movie is stupid.
There's no cohesion to the setting, all ultimately incidental to the narrative. There's very little presented of the characters. There are multiple subplots and pointless diversions that only seem to have been placed in there to make our eyes linger on the bodies of the cast, and create imagery meant to invoke sexiness, but fails utterly.
If you want to stare at these actresses for 80 minutes, watch 4 episodes of any of the Tokusatsu series they'd feature in. You'd end up getting more out of it in the end.
Hell, it contradicts itself from the details at the beginning, from the details at the end, and not simply the big, the world is not as you know it now, Matrix stuff. This movie is amazingly shallow. I literally could not remember a single detail about it as I typed up this review. It is that unremarkable.
And it's only because of meticulous notes on my part could I manage to write this up. Nothing at all stuck. I honestly feel like I had more specific critiques of the plot, but I can't recollect anything about it.
Granted, that could have all been exasperated by the translation, which is wildly inaccurate with many lines that are straight up bad localizations that change the context of how entire scenes read. Sakamoto's direction for the action scenes is the only highlight, but it's far from his best work, and the good moments are probably the only times he was working with something other than what was on a page. It's not a good vehicle for now Nagasawa and Ayumi Kinoshita, and I kind of wish this was more of a straight-up buddy cop movie in a sci-fi setting instead of the mess presented, as the two actresses seem to have a good dynamic in the few scenes they were playing off each other that I would have preferred to see more of.
Overall, it's just a bad movie. And again, this was a pretty silly premise, but one that has been pulled off effectively in the past. Though, much like time travel stories, not often by Japan. I mean, come on! A story about interdimensional travelers? That is not a hard story to screw up.
Gotcha this time! Hey!
The hell?
Hi there. You wouldn't happen to have seen a black and yellow bunny cat about yay big by any chance?
I'll see you all back here next time for Dot Hack Redemption.